Great. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am Leanne Wynn, and I am here representing Sharks for Kids. Thank you so much for joining us for another Jawsome Shark webinar series. Okay, and today it's super duper more special, if you will, put those fun and fabulous words all together, because it is Shark Awareness Day. So thank you for joining us for that. Again, by all means, never stop learning beyond this webinar, okay? We are on all social media platforms. Definitely check us out, okay? And at the end, I will also bring you to other webinar series that we have posted on our website to find out more information. But today, let's get down to the fun drawing at hand. So today we are joined once again by Dr. Julius, who is going to talk us through and share with us about the shark ray. So get your pencils and paper, or if you're doing it from computer, get those in hand and get ready for the fun action. Over to you.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Leanne. That was a great introduction, and yeah, happy Shark Awareness Day to you. And I guess this is also part of a Shark Week, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
At this point already. So it's going to be like all these different fun ways to commemorate or to recognize sharks and their relatives. And in this case, today it's going to be their relatives, the rays. But this one has both names in it. So it's a shark ray, also known as the Bowmouth Guitarfish. So whichever you prefer. But we're doing a really fun one today. It's a weird and wonky, wonderful animal. And it's not something that a lot of people are familiar with. Even there's also a false shark ray, which is even probably more unfamiliar. But you know, this one looks really wonky and neat, and good reasons to be able to share that. So anyway, yes, happy Shark Awareness Day. I've come prepared with my Save the Sharks t-shirt. This comes right from Sharks for Kids. So if you get yours, you know, or if you can get one, that's great. I also got a shark mug that my wife got me. And so we're all ready and set to go here. So I'm going to start sharing my screen here, and then we'll start chatting about shark rays and sharks and rays. So let's see here. So yeah, so thank you very much to everybody who has joined us. And if for some reason you can't attend today's webinar, it's really nice that Sharks for Kids staff have prepared this as a recorded meeting, so you can also access it afterwards and then be able to just kind of draw it at your leisure. So here we have our sort of preview of what we're going to be doing today. And let's just put this up. I'm just going to move around my screen side. There we go. Okay, now everything fits. So here we go. Now we have here, I've set this up in a digital format. So I'm going to be doing this digitally. As Leanne said, you can do it either digitally or using traditional media, like paper and pencil. If you're using paper and pencil, I've set this up so that it's going to be about an 8.5 by 11 inch page, sort of a typical letter size format. And one thing that would be useful is if you have your pencils, if you have two colors, that's great. Or if you want to use one pencil, then make sure that in the beginning, and I'll let you know, and I'll color code it with red to make lighter strokes. So make lighter lines with the anything that shows as red when I draw it. And then when we do the black lines, those ones are meant to be put in at full strength, at full weight. So that way we can set up some guide shapes initially, and then we'll make these into the final detailed version of the drawing. So this here is the preview of what we're going to be doing today. We're actually going to be drawing the shark ray from the side as they're in the middle. The one on the top right there you see is it's going to be helpful when we talk about the shape of this animal. And I just kind of drew that and we'll bring it in as we discuss it, but we're not going to be drawing the underside of the head just to keep things simple, but it's there so that we can see some of the wonky features of this interesting animal. Okay, so I'm going to turn off the preview for now, and let me just here we go. See if I can find it. This is the downside of using digital is trying to find all the bits that are on the screen and all the proper side. There we go. Turning on and turning off all the various parts. So, what is a shark ray? Is it a shark or is it a ray? Well, it's actually a ray. So yeah, we're in Sharks for Kids here, right? But remember that sharks are only one group of this larger group of cartilaginous fish, which means that they have their what we would normally have as bones, those hard bits inside us that help to keep our shape and keep us from sort of pooling into a blob of flesh without any hardness. They have, instead of bone, they have cartilage, right? And cartilage is like in your nose, for example, or your ears, that sort of softish, pliable, but still kind of rigid material. And cartilaginous fish, which is this group, those with a cartilage skeleton, include the sharks, the rays, and the chimeras. And what we're dealing with here are the rays. But the rays themselves also are very diverse. And they include everything from our typical sort of torpedo rays or skates or stingrays, which most people are familiar with, and manta rays, but also some unusual groups. And these include like the sawfish, which are not sharks, but they look a lot like sharks, but we have these long, wild, toothy saw snouts, and also a group called the wedgefish. And the wedgefish include the guitarfish, the shark ray, and relatives like this. So this group is critically endangered, which means that the International Union for the Conservation of Nature has, and scientists working for them have assessed them to be in great danger of extinction. That's the entire group of wedgefish, and including the shark ray. So anything we can do to help them to survive is going to be beneficial. So right now, we're going to be looking at one of the most, in my opinion, spectacular groups of or species of these wedgefish, the shark ray. So here we go. Let's begin. So to start out, we're going to make some guide shapes. So again, remember these first lines are going to be light or in a different color, or something that won't get in the way of the final details of the drawing. I'm going to be working on a tablet and with a stylus, but you can work with pencil and paper. And so the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to make sure that I'm on my right layer, because of course this is a digital piece. And here we go. So the first thing I want you to do is to keep in mind where we're going to be drawing these shapes on the page, so that you have enough space left for all of the rest of the animal. So we plan this thing out. So try to keep the shapes that you're drawing about the same size on your page as I draw them, and then we'll be just fine. If you run out of space, this is going to be recorded. You can do it again, and don't worry about it, because sometimes when we photograph animals in the wild, not all of them fits in the photograph, and that's okay. So this is how it works sometimes, right? Okay, so the first thing we want to do is we're going to draw a kind of a diamond, sort of a little bit of a up and down stretched diamond on the sort of the left-ish side of the screen, not fully left side, but left-ish. Okay? So you're going to go like this. And it's a diamond that is sort of a little bit stretched up and down. And so, yeah, this isn't exactly looking much like a shark ray or a wedgefish or a ray. Maybe a ray. I guess it looks like some rays, maybe. There's a group of rays called the butterfly rays, and this kind of looks a little bit like them from above, but that's not what we're doing right now. But another bit of fun fact there. So shark rays have these great big pectoral fins, these fins that are in the front. They're paired fins. They're actually analogous to, and another science word, homologous to our arms, which means that they are the same structure that in animals that evolved to live on land, that evolved into their arms or front legs. Okay, so this is their sharks and rays are cousins of some of our of us, in a sense, like distant cousins, and they share a common ancestor long ago. And then in that common ancestor, these pectoral fins evolved into the pectoral fins of rays and sharks, and into the arms and front legs of land animals. Okay, there we go. So this first shape is going to show part of that great big pectoral fin. The next thing we want to do is we want to make kind of like go to the right side of that diamond, to that corner piece, and just kind of continue it up in the same direction and make kind of a bit of a hook like this that goes about as high up as just about as the top of the diamond. Just a little bit of a hook at the end there. Actually, you know what? That looks a little bit more like a ray now, I guess, with the long tail some of them have. But again, not where we're going. So now we want to start to add the head. This will help us to define how far on the left side of the screen we're going to go. For this, we want to make kind of another hook, but pay attention to the shape. We're going to start at the left corner of this diamond. We're going to go out to the left, curve upward smoothly. Oops, sorry, I'm going to have to fix that because mine kind of went a little bit out. I wanted to make it a particular shape. You'll see that when I add new shapes, you'll see kind of where they show initially before drawing them, and that kind of helps you maybe to plan it. And then when you get to the top of this, then you curve it more sharply and go to the right, back toward the diamond, but not right to the tip, about that far. Okay. So it helps to break down animals into smaller, simpler shapes, I find. This is how a lot of us artists think sort of anyway, or partially like this. When we look at something and we want to draw it, we try to imagine it as composed of simpler shapes. And we do it in our mind, and we try to estimate the distance between different parts. And the simpler these shapes we can imagine, the simpler it is for us to draw it and allow our brains to think in a more straightforward way that doesn't try to overinterpret what we're looking at, but just draw it as we see it. The next thing we're going to do here is we're going to draw the actual pelvic fins of this animal, or one that is on our side of it. Now, the pelvic fins are also paired fins, like the pectoral fins that I mentioned, and they are the sort of the evolutionary equivalent of our legs, of land animals' legs. So the common ancestor had these pelvic fins, and they evolved in us into legs, and in sharks and rays into these pelvic fins. So we're going to start again at the corner, the right corner of that initial diamond. And we're going to draw a little line a little bit to the right, and we're going to turn downward. Notice the size of this is not so big. Then we're going to curve back upward like this and give it a slight curve like that. Okay? Kind of like a backward check mark, sort of, but not quite, not straight. It's got curved edges. So we're starting to see the shape of this animal form on the page, and that last one was the pelvic fin, our side. Then you saw the pectoral fin, which is the far left bottom, and then on that hook thing on top there is going to be actually our first dorsal fin, which is the fins that go on the back of the animal. Now we're going to help define the overall size of this animal. We're going to draw kind of an outline of the body. Just keep in mind, we're going to still have to add a tail fin to this, or a caudal fin. So don't go right to the edge of the page, but we're going to go close to the edge of the page. We're going to start at the point where that, I'll just draw a line here. You don't have to draw this part, but just an arrow. You see that corner there? We're going to start at that corner between that sort of hook shape for the head and the top of the diamond. And so I'm going to start there, and we're going to go out to the right and slowly curve downward a little bit through the hook halfway. And we're going to go and turn up a little bit, and then I'm going to stop. Before we get to the edge of the page, and then turn back sharply and curve back. You'll see it gets thicker and thicker and thicker, and meet at the back of that pelvic fin. And you can actually even go and lighten the line even more as we go back like that. Okay. So now we have the head, the paired fins, and the body, or the rest of the body of this animal. And we're gonna add another really fun feature. And this is where the shark ray gets really interesting. It's got this humped back above its head. And so we're going to draw that hump. And this is going to be a simple shape first. So we're going to start just at the back end of that head shape, just before the diamond on top. We're going to make this low curved hump like this, and then join it back to the body about there, between those lines. So it's, if you imagine this animal we're drawing here, we're seeing it not right from the side. We're seeing it sort of from the side, but also kind of turned a little toward us so that we're seeing it a little bit from above too. And so what we're going to see is both of the tips of both of the pectoral fins, those front paired fins, but we're also going to see some of the animal's back. And because it's partly from the side, we can see the humped back coming up above the animal too. So the next thing we're going to do is complete the first dorsal fin. Now, I mentioned the dorsal fins are those fins that are on the back of the animal. Dorsal means top, and basically they're, when the animal is swimming straight, they are the top fins. And these are the fins that in sharks you would see break through the water, and that give sharks that sort of that typical sort of stereotypic view of a shark, fin above the water. And these ones, this ray has some enormously tall dorsal fin. This is not something you usually see in rays. Not many rays have fins this size on top, but this one does. And in fact, all the wedge fish do, and the sawfish. They're an interesting set of groups of these cartilage boned or cartilaginous fish. They probably evolved very early and branched off from the other groups that became the more flat rays. So these ones look a lot more like sharks than our sort of typical rays. So we're going to draw a line from that top hook that we made, and it's going to be a slightly curved line. And we're going to join it with the body and actually just go slightly through that body line a little bit and then hook it back like that. The reason I hook it back like that at the bottom is because there's a sort of a trailing edge of these fins often that is free, sort of a free edge, and it allows the fin to kind of move a little bit more side to side as it's not fully connected to the body. So that's the first dorsal fin. Now, we can right away start to see that, as I was mentioning, this ray has very large dorsal fins. It has very, very large fins in general. And especially like all rays, most of the rays flat, the big flatness that we see in a ray, in the other groups of rays, not the wedgefish, is composed of these giant pectoral fins, these huge fins on the front. In fact, one of the typical features of a ray, and that distinguishes it from sharks, is that rays' pectoral fins are merged with their heads. And so there's no sharp sort of corner where the pectoral fin, these front paired fins, come off the body. And so with sharks, you can see there's usually a nice corner and you can see where the fin begins really easily. On rays, you often can't because it's so smoothly merged with the head that it's just a smooth curved line. And it's going to be the case here too when we add the final detail. But one of the things that I'd like to point out with these big fins of rays in general and the shark ray in particular now is that one of the major sources of threat for these, one of the major dangers for their extinction, is that many people like to eat the fins of sharks and rays. And there is a very big industry that catches sharks and rays, and they cut off the fins of the animal and then often throw back the animal without its fins into the water, which of course makes it suffer and die. It can't survive. It can't swim without the fins. Oh, or and sometimes the animal is taken whole, and the fins are the ones that are most prized. There are certain delicacies such as shark fin soup and various other forms. And what we would like to do is encourage people to avoid buying products that endanger these animals. So in other words, if you are aware that there is shark fin or other, especially illegally caught in food, I would avoid that. And that's so I actively avoid this kind of thing. We vote for change with what we buy often. And so, and spread the word to others. So this is one of the major threats for this animal, is that it is hunted both for its meat and also especially for its very big fins. Okay, so that's one thing to keep in mind here. We're going to now finish the full length of this shark ray by adding its tail fin, or caudal fin as it's called also. Okay, so this is another interesting feature of the shark ray, and it makes it very much like a shark rather than our sort of typical stereotypic ray. They have these big tail fins, and it looks like a shark fin. It has a longer lobe on top than on bottom, just like many sharks. And so we're going to start near the end of the shark ray's body, not quite at the end, but just a little ways in. We're going to go up and make this first sort of hook-like shape, which is the top lobe of this caudal fin. We're going to turn back at the end and head back toward the body, but a little beyond the end. And then when we cross that point, we're going to start hooking back out again, but not go as far as we did with the top one. We're going to go by that far, and then we'll turn back and make a nice curved line toward the body and continue it there. And there is the caudal fin, or the tail fin, of this animal. One of the things you'll notice is that unlike many sharks, the shark ray doesn't have what's called a subterminal notch, or basically a kind of a notch at the top end of the tail fin. So for example, with a shark, you don't have to draw this, but I'm just going to show you. With many sharks, you have a tail fin that goes like this. This is the top lobe, and you have this bit of a notch, and then it continues down, and then you have the lower lobe, and then it comes back like that. So that's common with many sharks. You have this bit of a notch right here. That's not present in the shark ray. It's also not present in all sharks. Like, for example, the whale shark. And interestingly enough, the whale shark is probably the shark that this animal looks most like, but it's not closely related to it. And we'll see the reason why it looks like that, partly because of the coloration, the overall width of the head, and so on, and the tail shape. It's a lot like a whale shark's tail, actually. Anyway, so that's the caudal fin. Now, this shark ray has two dorsal fins, like not all sharks, like most sharks. I have to say that because there are some sharks, like the cow sharks and the frill shark, the 6-gill sharks, the 7-gill sharks, and the 1-fin cat shark that have only a single dorsal fin. But most sharks, out of the close to 556 species now known, have 2 dorsal fins. Rays, on the other hand, have a variety. Some have 2 dorsal fins, some have 1 dorsal fin, and some of them have no dorsal fin at all. The shark ray has 2, and they have 2 big ones. The second dorsal fin is also very large, almost as large as the first dorsal fin. So we're going to go past the end of the first dorsal fin, about maybe 1/3 of the way to the tail fin, or the caudal fin, and we're going to start to draw another dorsal fin that's a very similar shape to the first one. Go up almost as tall. We're going to go that far and turn back down, kind of a triangular, kind of a nacho shape. Back to, and then to the bottom here, and then hook back a little bit, but only part of the way. Again, it has that bit of a trailing edge that's free from the connection with the body. And so there you can see how huge both these dorsal fins are, really tall. Probably, I think, a little taller than the depth of the body itself. So it's still relatively flat, like rays, a little bit flatter. So if you looked at the animal from the front, you would see that it is wider than it is tall, but not by too much compared to most rays, because most rays have a very flattened pancake-like shape. And this one is actually a lot more like a whale shark. Again, whale sharks have sort of this wider than tall body, and the shark ray does as well. Okay? So we want to make this animal be able to see, right? Because this shark ray is a wonderful creature as well in that it is an active hunter. And many rays kind of sit and wait on the ocean floor, and they wait for fish to come by if they eat fish, or they look for bottom-dwelling shellfish like clams and such to crunch them, or slurp up other kinds of soft-bodied animals. Well, the shark ray swims around, and its body shape tells you that immediately. You can see how aerodynamic or hydrodynamically it's shaped. It's evolved well to swim actively, and it hunts animals such as fish, like croakers, which kind of look like bass. And it also does eat a lot of shellfish, hard-bodied animals that it has to crunch through that lay on the bottom usually. But we're going to give it an eye so it can see. And we're going to put the eye on the side of the head. Now, the eyes of this animal are on the head, but sort of near the top of the head, more so than on the sides. We only see one eye from the way we're looking at it, because remember, again, we're looking at it sort of from the top and sort of from the side. So the eye is going to go right here in the middle of this head shape and give kind of a longer oval shape like that. There we go. That's its eye. The other thing that this animal has, actually, first, the one thing that we can't see from this angle are the gills or the mouth. And this is another feature that's characteristic of rays. It helps us to distinguish them from sharks. Sharks have their gill slits. Remember those 5, 6, or 7 slits in the side of the body through which water exits, and inside of which are the gill filaments, which are tissues through which a lot of blood is pumped so that it can draw oxygen from the water and allow the animal to breathe. But rays don't have sideways oriented gill slits. Their gill slits are on the underside of their body. And from above, you can't see them. And the same thing with the mouth. And sharks also usually have a mouth that's underneath, or underslung as it's often called. But in rays, it's often very much more down below. In fact, if we wanted to see it, and here's where it comes in handy, that little drawing I did of the underside of the head of the shark ray. This is what we would see if we lifted up the shark ray, or if it swam toward us and showed us its underside of its head. That weird wavy line there that kind of goes up and then down is its mouth. Those two strange slits that make sort of like a V shape on top are its nostrils. Very large. So water can enter through those, but it doesn't breathe through them like we do with our nostrils. Water simply passes over cells that are very sensitive to chemicals that are in the water so that it can identify them and basically smell with them. But they're not connected to any kind of breathing structure. These don't have lungs. Instead, water comes in through the mouth and then exits through the gill slits. And the gill slits you can see there along the bottom of that blackened drawing. There's 5 of them, or 5 pairs of gill slits, and they're on the very bottom of the animal. In fact, just after the pectoral fins start, and that's where the water exits, and it allows the water to keep flowing from the mouth and then exiting through the gill slits, so the shark ray can continue to breathe. But some of the time, the shark ray, like many other rays, and not as much as many other rays, but also some of the time, it sits on the bottom too, often preferring sandy bottoms, but can sometimes be found in sort of coral reef areas as well, or rocky areas. When it sits on the bottom, that mouth is often covered by the seafloor. So they have an additional evolved feature that helps them to breathe, to continue to breathe when they're resting on the bottom. And this feature also helps to especially provide more oxygen to the brain. And it's called a spiracle. A spiracle is an extra hole on the side of the head, just behind the eyes, through which water can enter. And here we have, we're going to draw kind of a vertical oval just behind the eye. And it's bigger than the eye, actually. These ones have especially large spiracles. And they are, as I mentioned, a gas exchange feature. In other words, it helps them to take up oxygen and give up carbon dioxide with the water. They exchange these gases with the water so that they can continue to have their blood oxygenated or rich in oxygen and release the carbon dioxide that their cells produce. And so there's our spiracle. Now we will give this shark ray additional features that make it really cool, in my opinion. Shark rays are fed on by tiger sharks, for one thing. Tiger sharks are one of their main predators. So yes, this is a predator. Yes, it hunts fish and it hunts shellfish. Oh, and by the way, that underside feature, sort of the drawing that I made of the underside of the head, you can see on the mouth, there's that weird W-shaped, kind of W-shaped edge. Well, if you look closely, you'll see, and I'm gonna just zoom in a bit so you can see it a little better. If you look closely, you'll see that that weird wobbly line there is its mouth, but on either side, on the top and on the bottom, there are these bumps that I have kind of cross-hatched and made sort of like little mini diamonds on. Those are the teeth. Those little tiny diamond shapes. Those are all teeth. So there's little rows of teeth. And there are 4 of these sort of bumps full of teeth on the upper jaw and 3 of them on the lower jaw. And those bumps, the lobes of the mouth interlock. And there are many teeth on each of those. And those teeth are relatively flat compared to many sharks. What this gives the animal the ability to do is not only to grab fish, because they're a little bit sharp, but they're mostly flat, but it also allows it to crush hard objects. So in other words, sometimes one of the main foods of the shark ray are bivalves or things like clams and other hard shelled shellfish, which are mollusks. And so it needs to be able to crush through the shell to get at the soft insides. And that mouth, with that particular sorts of teeth, are really well suited to crushing these kinds of hard animals. In some ways, it's similar to a horn shark. We did a horn shark drawing a while back, and you can see the similarity in some of the teeth to between the two. Okay, so there we go. As I was saying, even though it's a predator, the shark ray does fall prey to sharks such as tiger sharks. Now, many animals that are prey to predators have evolved means to protect themselves to maximize how well they survive in an environment that is filled with dangers such as predators. And one of the really neat features of the shark ray that helps it to survive against tiger sharks is that it has these amazing ridges on its hump, on its back, and above its eyes, so protecting very key susceptible parts. And these ridges are not just raised flesh, but are full of what are essentially teeth, and really quite large and sharp teeth. They're called dermal denticles, and these dermal denticles are also, in their small form, what covers the surface of all sharks and rays typically. So if you feel a shark or a ray, you'll feel that it feels a bit like sandpaper. That's because its surface is covered with these modified teeth. So sharks and rays are covered with teeth all over. It's not just in their mouth. But these are very specialized little teeth that are hydrodynamically evolved so that it allows the water to pass over the animal's surface very smoothly without causing much turbulence or messing up the water's directions. And that allows them to swim very efficiently with very little power. Those little teeth all over their body can, in some cases, be modified to be much larger to be protective. You see this in some organisms like the prickly shark or bramble shark, but you see it in this one as well. And in the shark ray, they are exceptionally large in these ridges. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw these ridges, and then afterwards, I'm going to show you how to draw the teeth that are on them. So the ridges happen in, for example, there's one above the eye in spiracle. So you're going to draw a long shape like this, kind of like a banana, like that. Above our side eye, the left eye. And then there's also one above the right eye. And we can't see the right eye, remember, because it's on the other side of this sort of curved head. But we can see this ridge above the eye, kind of like a big eyebrow. It's up like this, and it's another little hump, basically, on the edge, like that. So imagine that above its eye, there are these two raised ridges. Also, there are a couple of snout ridges. So right in front of that, those eye ridges, there's a couple of very small ones, just a little bit bigger than the eye, close to the same size one there, and then one in front of the other eye ridge, like that. And then in addition to that, we have these shoulder ridges on the side. So this is a pretty well protected animal. If you go to, about little top, sort of the top end of this, not quite the top end, about halfway up this diamond shape we made initially, there's a kind of a ridge that slants back downward like this. And then one below it that's smaller, like this. Okay, and now we have given the animal most of its features. The last thing we want to do here with these guide shapes is to make clearer that pectoral fin on the other side of the animal. Because remember, it's a ray and it has very large pectoral fins. And from this angle, where we're looking at it slightly from above, we can see the pectoral fin on the other side. And so that diamond we drew initially, the tip of the diamond is actually the tip of the far pectoral fin. But we want to make the shape more accurate. So we're going to go start at the tip and draw this slightly curved line to the back of that eyebrow ridge. This. That's basically the shape that we would see. So now we have the overall guide shapes for this shark ray. And we're going to add some details now, such as those dermal denticles that protect it from tiger shark attacks on those ridges. The one thing I didn't mention was that hump on the back of the animal is there not just because it has a humped back, but it's the biggest one of these ridges that's covered with the biggest teeth, these dermal denticles, these protective denticles. And so we're going to draw those as well. But just keep in mind that imagine this animal is basically almost like it swallowed a circular saw blade and it's kind of sticking out through its back. That's kind of what it's like. So it's really hard for an animal like a tiger shark even to bite into it, maybe. So it's a really well protected. So here we're going to now switch. So we've done all this in red or a different color or lighter lines. Now I'm going to switch to black. And you can switch to either your darkest color, or if you've been making light lines to this point, now you can start making darker lines. And I'm going to color code this again with a black pen instead of red so that you can see the difference. And so what we're going to do now is start drawing the final details. And for much of this, we're going to draw along the same lines we drew already. So for example, the snout is pretty much like what we drew it before. Notice it's different shaped from the side and above than it is from below. You can see from below, it's this beautiful U-shaped head. But from the side, we're seeing kind of like almost like a little bit of an upturned snout. That's because the shark ray has not just a wide snout, but the tip of it is slightly turned upward. So it's a little bit of a hooked snout. This also helps it to swim better, right? Because basically it looks a little bit like a boat from the side. So that bit of an upturned snout gives it extra lift as water is pushed down as it swims forward, helping the shark ray to its body to be pushed up by the water as it swims. So it's more efficient. Again, it's a swimmer. It hunts prey actively sometimes. So here we go. We're going to go at the very tip of the snout. Actually, let's start from the bottom, from the point where it joins the hump at the back, okay? And we're going to draw over the ridge, the eye ridge on top. So I'm going to start here and just draw first a light line over that eye ridge, and we're going to put the teeth in afterwards. Just follow the same line you drew, and there's a little bit of a bump at that little ridge in front of the eye. And then we're going to draw, there's a little bit of an upturned hook to the snout. And we're going to keep going down. Sorry, there we go. Follow the same line you did before. And when we get to the pectoral fin, remember I mentioned that sharks, rays, unlike sharks, have their pectoral fins merged with their head. Well, we're going to show that a bit by making a sort of a smooth line that connects with the pectoral fin. slight curve there, not a very sharp, corner. Okay? So there's our snout. The next thing we're going to do is continue that pectoral fin. Now, pay attention here. We made initially a simplified diamond to kind of give us the position of the pectoral fin, but now we're going to add a little bit of an extra curve to it to make it a little more accurate. So we're going to continue from where we left off. We're going to go a little bit out of that diamond slightly and curve back toward the tip of it, like that. And then we're going to just pretty much follow the red line along the back edge of that pectoral fin. But when we get to the corner of the diamond here, we're going to turn sharply back toward the front of the animal, like this, and then just kind of give it a wee bit of an upturn, like that. Again, most of the fins, pretty much all of the fins of this animal that are not the tail fin, have this bit of a extra flap at the back that is not joined, and so to the body, and so you have a little bit of a freedom of movement of the back edge of the fins, like that. So that's the huge left pectoral fin. Now we're going to continue with the pelvic fin. We pretty much made this as we wanted to in the beginning, so we're going to just continue from the back edge, the pectoral fin, and come back and follow our red line along the pelvic fin. A little bit hooked slightly like that. Oops, it's a bit more of a curve than I wanted. I'm just going to redo that part. And yeah, if you mess up something, don't worry about it. Just, you can sketch it. It's all good. I'm just going to continue back here to where it joins, and that's where it joins the body right there. And then that edge here is all sort of free, free moving, just like with the pectoral fin. So that is our pelvic fin on our side. Remember, it's a paired fin. There are two of them. And we can only see the one of them because that huge dorsal fin is, and the rest of the body are preventing us from seeing the one on the far side, on the right side of the animal. Okay. And speaking of the dorsal fin, we're going to now draw that first dorsal fin. And again, the way it connects with the body is not as sharp as we drew in the guidelines. We're going to continue. Actually, what we're going to do is draw the animal's back and then lead to the dorsal fin. So at the back edge of that eyebrow ridge, we're going to turn up and follow that hump that we drew right in the beginning. So going up slightly to that humped back, like this. It comes back down toward the animal's back. And now we go toward the dorsal fin. And where it reaches the dorsal fin, we're going to have a bit of a smoother curve. And follow up along the dorsal fin as we drew it before. To the top where it's kind of a slightly sharp hook. And then come back down, curved back. And my line is kind of messy there. But, and then again, there's that little bit of a free back edge. Like that. Actually, if you want, it doesn't have to be perfect. Let's say I'm going to draw the back edge of this dorsal fin. You can add this afterwards too. I'm going to give it a little bit of a nick like this, or maybe even a couple of them. So remember that in the wild, animals aren't always perfectly formed. They go through life, and life is sometimes hard. They encounter dangers, and for example, tiger sharks or other predators. I may have frozen there. I'm not sure. I hope that you guys can see me. Leanne, is it okay? Do you get any freezing up there?
If you want to go ahead and move your mouse again.
Okay, there we go.
Yes,
Okay,
we did get a little bit of a freeze.
Okay.
I don't see the movement of your mouse.
Okay. Let me just draw a test shape now. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, good. It's working. All right. Sometimes things happen. That's okay.
Oh, good.
Okay, good. So as I was saying, that animals sometimes fall prey to predators. And so, for example, tiger sharks and maybe some other predators might have tried to eat this one and it got away, but maybe got a little injury. Or the other danger is that they can get snagged in nets, right? And sometimes when they get free from nets, they can still have some injuries. And so you'll see a lot of damage to like the fins of some of these animals, and sometimes to their bodies. If anybody has cats, And if their cats have had the misfortune of being outside in the cold, sometimes they can get a little bit of their ears frozen, and sometimes they can get little nicks in their ears. So similar things happen in the wild, of course. Sometimes it's rough. And so I've added some of these nicks to the dorsal fin of this shark ray just to give it that realistic feel of, well, it's been through a bit of life. and that happens. Actually, while we're on this topic here, I should mention that shark rays, although they're critically endangered, which means that they are at severe risk of going extinct, they exist in very low populations over a pretty large area of where they live. They live along the east coast of Africa, up along the shores right through the Indian Ocean, and then down toward Australia, through Indonesia and Papua New Guinea to the north side of Australia. And they have different population sizes in different areas. And part of the reason for that is that there are different fishing practices. And this is where we can see the effects of conservation policies working where they're applied. In the western part of its range, they're doing very poorly. In the southeastern corner, around Australia especially, they're still doing not well, but they're doing better than in other parts of the world. Why? Partly because the fishing is more strictly regulated there. They are required to be released. This is, they're well protected animals by law. And so that's important because we need to protect them. We need to establish laws to protect endangered animals. But also because part of the policies involve the requirement to use what are called turtle exclusion devices on nets, which means that some trawl nets, in other words, nets that are pulled by boats along near the bottom of the ocean to pick up fish that live and swim near the bottom, are required to have a hole in the, say, the top, and then this special kind of a flap that traps fish with sort of vertical slits, but it allows wide, flat animals like turtles or anything that's similar shaped, like wedge fish, such as the shark rays, to be able to exit the net without being snagged in the net. So because these kinds of turtle exclusion devices are used in this area, in Australian waters, a lot more of these wedge fish, such as the shark ray, are able to escape nets without dying. Sorry, there's a motorcycle outside. Without dying. And one of the problems they encounter is that because they have these protective dermal denticles, they get snagged easily in nets. So if they can escape the net through these devices, then more of them survive. And we see better populations of them, larger populations around Australia, for example. So conservation policies work when they're applied. We need to keep promoting them. Okay, so anyway, that's a little digression there, but it's an important thing to mention. We're going to continue along the back of the animal, or the back of the dorsal fin, along that red line of the body. Notice I didn't draw the line through the dorsal fin because that was a guide shape. Behind the dorsal fin, we'll continue, and then we'll curve up to the second dorsal fin and follow the line. Whoops, again, a messy line there, but that's okay. We can sketch. Follow the line up that we drew of the second dorsal fin, just as we drew it, because we drew it pretty close to what we need. Then back down and hook a little bit forward at the bottom to make that free edge in the back. Then we're going to continue with the body and the caudal or tail fin. And when we go toward the tail fin, I'll point out one more thing, and this is another neat feature of this animal that is not found in most rays, but is found in many sharks. It's an actively swimming animal, and what we see in many actively swimming sharks are what are called these caudal keels or precaudal keels. They are extra wide areas of the body that are flattened out, kind of almost like sideways pointing fins, just before the tail. It kind of gives it, if you looked at it from the back, you'd see the tail going up and down and these little keels, like in a boat, going side to side, and it makes the back end of it look almost like a torpedo. And that actually gives it the same ability to swim with much better control. And so what we're going to do to show that is when we go from the back of this dorsal fin, the second dorsal fin, we'll continue along the body line we drew. But before we get to the tail fin, we're going to widen it a little. There's a little bit of a bump like that. Okay? And then we're going to go back to the body, the pelvic fin, underneath the belly of the animal. Okay, so start at the back of the pelvic fin. We're going to draw that same along the red line we drew for the body, but remember, when we get near the tail, just right around the same place we drew that bump on top, we're going to draw a bit of a bump outward toward us, downward here, like that. So what we're seeing here, right, is remember that the animal is, oops, I'm just going to fix that bit. We're seeing this mostly from the side, but also a little bit from above. And part of the reason I selected this angle is so that we can see these caudal keels. We're seeing it a little bit from above there. And so these are two sideways pointing, widened areas of the body. Now we're going to draw the tail fin. And the tail fin, or the caudal fin, starts from the top here. Notice I went in a little bit before the end of that caudal keel, because that one is on the other side of the animal, right? The one at the bottom is on our side, but the one on the other side disappears a little bit behind the front edge of the tail fin or caudal fin. Oops, oh, sorry, my computer is starting to do funny things here. I'm going to have to fix that. Oh, interesting. Okay. I just have to erase a couple of lines here that. Oh, okay. Hang on. I have a wee bit of a malfunction happening. I appear to have lines appeared from nowhere. And I'm not sure where those came from. Isn't that the strangest thing? Okay, it's on a different layer. Those little black lines down there. And I'm just going to fix that. Oh, those are. Oh, I see what happened. Okay. All right, that's actually that is something that's on the screen. So let's not worry about that. It's fine. Let me just do this here. One moment, please. I'm just going to do a quick share. And I'm just going to, there we go. And start sharing again, because what ended up happening, and share screen is, where was that located? Sorry, I'm just trying to, let's find this again. Here we go. Okay, I'm just gonna find my little thing here. Interesting. Here we are. Sorry. I've lost the button for the screen share. Oh, there it is. Okay, here we go. I just had to reset the screen. Now we're good. We're back in business.
Oh, yay. And the lines are gone.
Sorry?
Yay.
The lines are gone. Yes.
Yes.
I don't know where they came from, but we fixed it. So I was just going to draw the tail fin. And again, we already drew that in the red in the guidelines. And we're just going to follow the same line that we drew like that. So again, that great, big, beautiful tail fin that is not common in many other rays. Like that. And now we've already done the hump. We're going to finish up the eye ridges. Now, here's where we're going to show you how to do those protective teeth along the ridges. Okay? So along the hump here on top, we're going to draw about 5 or 6 of these bigger teeth and then tiny little teeth along in between. So starting at the front of the hump, we're going to start to draw one sort of low triangular shaped tooth like that. Another one. And there may be some variation in the number. Now we're going to get smaller toward the back. Smaller and smaller and smaller. And then there's also in between them, there's little ones. You may or may not draw them, but you'll also be able to show that this is a ridge full of teeth by making a little line like this that's along it, underneath it a little bit, just to show that there's a region with lots of teeth. And you can draw little tiny teeth here and there in that band of tissue that's full of these teeth. Now we're going to do the same thing with the ridges above the eyes. I'm going to draw about 3-ish big teeth. And then there's lots of tiny little teeth along it. And again, you can draw sort of that little bit of a light line that helps to distinguish where the ridge, because it's a bit of a wider ridge, not just fully narrow. And then on the eye ridge on our side, again, there's sort of some big teeth. And there's a bit of variation, I think, in the number and size of these teeth, but we have little teeth throughout this area as well. These would be really sharp. And one of the things that fishermen notice when they're pulling in their nets is that in areas where this shark ray lives, and if they become entangled in the net in places where they don't have these turtle exclusion devices, those teeth are sharp enough to cut through the net in some cases. That doesn't mean that the shark ray can get away, because there's got a lot of big fins that can also get entangled, but it can do a lot of damage to nets. So this is one of the reasons why some fishermen would like to avoid catching it. So, fishermen make a living, but they also want to avoid damaging their nets, and this would be a good way to help to encourage protection of this animal by encouraging them to use devices that allow the animal to escape without damaging the net. Okay, so then of course we have some of those little ridges along the shoulder as well, and in front of the eyes, and they're smaller teeth along these, like that. And then there's the other shoulder one, has the smallest teeth on the one that's closest to the pectoral fin. And then those little tiny ridges in front of the eyes, they also have very tiny teeth comparatively. Now, remember, there's that pectoral fin on the far side of the animal. So we're not going to do the whole diamond shape like we did. We're going to do just the edge of the pectoral fin that we showed at the very end of the guide shapes, like this. We can see the tip of that pectoral fin because we're seeing it a little bit from above. And the eye now, for the eye, I'm going to zoom in a bit so you can see what happens with the eye detail. And so these guys have an eye that is mostly sort of oval shape, but it's got a wee bit of a kind of like a bean shape. So it's not quite the same on all sides, kind of a little bit. And the pupil is neat. Like many rays, they don't have a round pupil. They have a U-shaped pupil. It's really neat. This is part of an adaptation for shading light, especially from above. Okay, so you'll just draw this kind of U shape, like that. That's the neat shape. Many of these sharks and rays have amazingly shaped pupils, and this one has a neat one. And then, of course, the spiracle. There's that great big breathing device, right? So you're going to pretty much follow the oval shape you made before. But we're also going to add one more bit. That's the outside sort of gap in the surface of the animal. But there's also an inside circle visible where it sort of enters the animal's body. So there's a little bit of an extra thing that you can shade in or not, whichever. But that's kind of like there's another little hole deeper in. Now, the last thing we need to do here is to show a little bit about the coloration. For this, you can have fun with it. I won't draw this in myself manually, but I'll show you what happens. So it's got a bunch of white spots all over it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to turn these up to full brightness. That. Okay. Oh, there we go. And I'm also going to now remove the guide shapes that we did initially. Okay, so you can see what it looks like using only the details that we added. And to do that, we're just going to turn off the guides. Yeah. And voila, that is the overall shape. The last thing we can do actually is this animal also has these slight ridges along its body, or areas where the body isn't smooth, but has a little bit of almost like a fold. So along the back, you see that ridge of denticles that's between the lowest shoulder one and the hump. Well, there's a little bit of a line, a very light line that continues along the back of the animal like this. Whoops, sorry, I kind of made that at the wrong angle. Funny thing about these tablets is if you twist them in your lap, they change line directions. Whoops, that's a little thicker. My computer's doing funny things. That's okay. Well, there again, light line. This. There's even another wee bit of a line that goes part of the way back like that. I mentioned how this species is similar in some ways to whale sharks. It looks like them. It's not related closely, but it looks like them. The spots, for one thing, those bit of ridges along the body also are found similarly in whale sharks. Whale sharks don't have these huge teeth on the outside, though. And so you can see how well it's protected. So it's got a bunch of beautiful spots all over its body. It's often a grayish to brown base color, and then those spots are white. And with age, they kind of can fade a bit, but you can see a lot of these spots, especially toward the back, quite nice and bright. They also have some black markings, like this. So they've got a couple of sort of like, almost like a backward C shape on this side. And there's a little bit of a stripe at one of the shoulder ridges. And then there's like sort of 2 or 3 stripes sideways or going crossways across the top of the head of the animal between those eyebrow ridges. And then there's that little bit of a line that I drew along the front snout that actually just denotes an area where there's a little bit of a lighter color underneath it. It's not a black stripe, it's just a lighter color underneath. You'll see that the animal doesn't have a fin that's found in many sharks called an anal fin. That's a little fin underneath, just in front of the tail. It doesn't. In many cases, pretty much all rays, I think, lack an anal fin. There might be a few that have it. Most sharks have it. The dogfish don't. Saw sharks don't. Saw sharks and sawfish are 2 different groups that evolved separately. Really cool. Angel sharks don't have it. The bramble sharks or prickly sharks don't have it either. And rays like the wedgefish don't have it either. Neither do sawfish, which are rays. And so here we have it. This is our completed shark ray swimming along happily, avoiding nets and avoiding tiger sharks, protecting itself using those wonderful teeth on the outside of the body. And these are extremely rare. So if you've ever had a chance to see one in the wild, you are extraordinarily lucky. So if you have a chance to go swim in areas where they live, keep an eye out. You never know. I didn't get to see one when I swam around New Caledonia where they do occur. But I did see 4 other species of sharks, so I was very, very, very happy to be able to swim with them. But these are harmless. They grow up to about 3 meters or 10 feet long. I wouldn't stick my hand into the mouth because they can crush shells, right? But they don't actively hunt humans or anything like that. They're very peaceful animals, and we need to protect them as well as we can because they are in great danger of extinction. So whatever we can do to promote their conservation, the better. And education is one way. Spread the word to your friends. If you can invite others to do this drawing session, that's great. The more people learn about these animals, the more we know what we need to protect. And so with that, I'll hand it back to you, Leanne. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody.
Thank you so much, Julius. I'm so sorry, Dr. Julius.
It's okay.
Thank you so much. It's been a long week. Again, that was super cool going through it. We had a couple of glitches, but it's okay. And as right here, again, I'm sure for you as an artist and our artists at home, sometimes works of arts are done by making simple mistakes and so forth like that. Sometimes you wind up getting amazing things, amazing pieces of art. So I'm just going to share my screen for a moment to just bring us back to all of the awesome webinars that we have. So here today, we had one simply on Draw a Shark, and there are plenty of others. On our website here, Sharks for Kids, you can see some of our upcoming webinars as well as others. If you go to our YouTube page and are subscribed to the YouTube channel, you can see so many other how to draws in addition to all of our others. Continuing with the idea of shark awareness, learn more. There's outreach. We have the capability of giving virtual talks, okay? There's different curriculum and activities, coloring sheets and so forth. There's great, awesome, different ways to get involved. And we also have lots of pictures and videos. So on behalf of Sharks for Kids, I want to say thank you again to everyone who joined us live and everyone who is going to see this recording after the fact. and wish everyone a happy and fantastic day. And again, a special thank you so much to Dr. Julius for yet another awesome, informational, educational, and how to draw on sharks and their relatives.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Leanne. Thank you, everybody, for joining. I hope you have a wonderful Shark Awareness Day, and keep fighting for the biosphere.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Take care.